Welcome to another episode of the YXE Sports Podcast, live from Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar in Saskatoon. Of course, we are always live here at Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar. We're live on their Facebook page. We're live on the YXE Sports Podcast Facebook page, no YXE as well. So we're found almost, well, not quite almost everywhere, but almost everywhere.
Almost everywhere.
Yep. And then, of course, on the great wide world of streaming services as well. So we're live there. Wray Morrison joins me again in what was a fantastic weekend, a fantastic Saturday weather-wise.
Wasn't that great to get out?
Dude, I was able to do some running around, and I was actually able to wear shorts out and about on Saturday afternoon. So
it was really nice.
Fantastic.
That's early. We might have a little bit of white stuff this week, I hear, but no, it was good. Spring weather is coming.
Where it's here, it's beautiful out on the Monday night here. So,
or as we call it, playoff weather.
Yeah,
right. Hockey playoff weather.
Hockey playoff weather. Even though there's not hockey playoffs quite yet, but
it's coming.
Hockey playoffs soon. We do have a hockey guest joining us.
We do,
and this is a fantastic thrill, a huge thrill for us, because on the show tonight we have Dave King, who of course coached the University of Saskatchewan Huskies back in the 1980s. He was the head coach when the Huskies won their only national championship. He was the head coach of the Calgary Flames in the mid-90s, the Columbus Blue Jackets. He was an assistant coach in Arizona in 2010 through 2012. He's coached overseas, and of course he has a new book, and that's what we're going to talk about. It is called Loose Pucks and Ice Bags, and Dave King joins us from Scottsdale, Arizona, where you know something about the nice weather. So, Dave, happy to have you along here. Thanks for joining us.
It's terrific, guys. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
So, kind of just take us through the premise of this book and how it kind of started and how it all came to be.
You know, Matt, I'm a guy who constantly goes into every bookstore I see, and I right away go to the sports section, and then I find the hockey section. And there seem to be so many books written by players, Curtis Joseph, Theron Fleury, lots of books about individuals. I was just a little bit surprised after a while there wasn't much written about the game. And so I thought, I wonder if I should put together something on the game and how the game is changing a little bit, just so a hockey fan and a hockey coach for sure could learn more about and understand more about the game, because the game is constantly changing, and that's never going to be an exception to the rule. It's constantly, every generation, we're seeing differences in how the game is played. The players are getting bigger, stronger, faster, but tactically too, the game is on the change.
I just want to remind our viewers that you can win a Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar gift certificate. I forgot to get that out of the way off the top, but make sure you leave a comment below and you can win a Wendell Clark's gift certificate. You kind of mentioned, Dave, that, it's for maybe just the casual hockey fan, the reader, or maybe a coach. So who really is the target audience, if there is one, with this book?
Matt, I tried to write a book that I thought obviously coaches, people that are coaching hockey would enjoy. A guy who's an ex-player and maybe not coaching would also enjoy. But I wanted to reach out to people that enjoy hockey as fans, but don't have a high level of understanding of the game. So I've written the book in such a manner that I think the average hockey fan can read it, get something out of almost every chapter. And I tried to cover a wide range of topics that I think are relevant to the game. And the whole focus, too, was on how the game is changing, because it was interesting doing the book. I talked to ex-players like Bill Orban, Adam Keller, Gary Peters, all from Saskatchewan, about how the game was played in the 50s. And that also kind of spurred me on to writing the book, because when they talked about their existence in pro hockey back in those days, I just found it an amazing story. It was really good.
Yeah. Dave Tippett, Barry Trotz, Mike Babcock, I think all have recommended this book. So those are some pretty good National Hockey League coaches that are recommending this book. So, Ray?
Oh, absolutely. And I saw a great interview with you, Dave. Good to see you, by the way. How are things?
Thanks. Oh, great, Ray.
Good stuff. I was telling Matthew, you were a reference for my first job in radio back in 1983. So 38 years later, people can blame Dave King for me being in their ear and in their face for that long. So it was such a great time in the early 80s with the University of Saskatchewan Huskies. It was fantastic. You know, I saw a great interview that you had done as well. And one of the things you had talked about were the chapters in the book. And one of them was times are changing.
Yes.
And you had talked a little bit about in that, and correct me if I'm wrong. Don't be afraid to correct me. But one of the players that came up was Brad McCrimmon. And you had talked about how there can be an offensive style to the way a defenseman plays, even in his own zone, kind of that offensive defenseman. And it was interesting because Ron McLean always said this about Brad McCrimmon. And I know you and he have some ties that are a little bit tragic to Russia, but also some ties in the National Hockey League. But it's interesting that Ray Bork, Mark Howe, Al McInnes, Nick Lidstrom, and Chris Pronger, all Hall of Famers, and Ron McLean was the one that pointed this out to me, learn from Brad McCrimmon, right? And you kind of talk about how he revolutionized kind of the offensive defenseman and how you can be a threat in your defensive zone. And maybe you can elaborate on that, because that's kind of an illustration of how tactical this book is.
It's really interesting when you watch. I was lucky. I was the national team coach in Calgary. That's where we were headquartered. So I got a chance to watch the Flames practice a lot and play a lot. And Brad was playing for him, and I knew him very well from the days in Rosetown. So him and Chris Chelios were two guys that when they defended, they constantly were looking for opportunities to turn that puck over and start the attack really quickly. And they would often give you things thinking you could do it. And it was all a ploy. They were just steering you to where they want you to go. They take their stick and put it in the wrong lane, but at the right moment, put it in the correct lane and take away the pass. So they were guys that were defending, but they were thinking a little bit offensively as they were defending. And so that instinct that they had, it made Brad really a great player. Like he was a guy that took and intercepted so many passes in the course of the game. It's because he had a great stick and he anticipated with his stick, and he would fool you. He'd put it somewhere where it wasn't, you thought it was not a problem. And suddenly at that key moment when the pass was being attempted, it was in the right lane to take away the pass. So they did a lot of little things like that in their game. That's a sample of one, but a lot of little things that allowed a defenseman in a defending role to not be passive, not let the offensive guy dictate to you. You could dictate to him by doing these kind of little tactics. So they, both Chris Chelios and Brad McCrimmon were very interesting players to watch play because they were so darn smart.
You kind of talked about how this book is based on a little bit about tactics and things like that. Well, we all know how long your coaching career and how successful your coaching career was, but what are some of the changes that you've seen over all your years in hockey from kind of when you first started to how the game is being played up until recently?
That's a terrific question, Matt. It's an interesting question. The game has changed because of many, many things. If you go back into the 60s, when the World Hockey Association came into play, all of a sudden you needed twice as many players because they had 12 or 14 World Hockey League teams. And that gave a lot of players a chance to get their NHL or World Hockey Association experience. And so that opened the game up and brought more offense to the game and gave people that were offensive a much greater opportunity to play in the game. And in the 70s, we had the Russia-Canada series that scared us quite a bit because we barely won it. But it did indicate to all of us that there was a lot going on in Russia and in Europe that was very, very interesting. And they were playing the game in a different way. And all of a sudden, some of those ideas started to permeate. And then in the, I would say, late 70s and into the 80s, a lot of college coaches went into pro hockey. People like Pierre Pagé, Bill Mahoney, George Kingston, Pierre Pagé. They all went into the NHL as assistant coaches, and they brought a lot of this European stuff because they'd been using it with their college teams. And then they brought it to the NHL. And then, of course, when you go into the 90s, the Russians over in Europe were so good. Nobody could really play them in Europe and play them competitively. So the Swedes took the 1-3-1 basketball defending system and applied it to hockey, and it is the trap. And that became the thing that permeated into the NHL game too, into the 90s and 2000s. And then in 1999-2000, another major occurrence occurred. The NHL changed the rules. zero tolerance, trapezoid for the goalie so he couldn't get out and handle the puck. 2 referees, no red line. They changed the size of the end zones, made them 4 feet deeper, and the neutral zone total 8 feet less. So tactically, the game was going to change, and it did. So all these types of landmark things cause our game to react and change. And so it's really interesting to watch it evolve. And along with the tactical change, I mean, players have become so fast. They've become so skilled. We have lots more skilled players than we've ever had before. I was watching just a moment ago Barzell on TV, Western Hockey League player. Players like that are amazing players. So we have more skill. We have more speed. We have smarter players. It's not all big guys. The small player now can play. He's got a chance to have a real impact on the game. So it's made for, I think, a more exciting game. And however, there are also some changes in the game that haven't been very productive. The drive to improve and create more offense is always ongoing. And that seems to be the one the NHL would really like to change is what can they do to get more offense into the game without changing the game a great deal. You can't go down to 4 skaters, for example, because that changes everything.
Well, and the other thing too that's interesting, Dave, that I find intriguing about it is one of the topics came up that you had in your book was the player's coach, and I think it might have been Igor Larionov and
Dave Tippett
were 2 of the players you had talked about that kind of had to, because the game was evolving so fast, you had a coach behind the bench, but you also needed a coach behind, on the ice too. Just because of the evolution of the game was happening just so quickly. So maybe you could touch a little bit on that.
Well, it really helps a coach to have guys within your lineup that are smart players, guys that really understand the game. And if you go back to the era when the Russians were at their best there was Krutov, Makarov, Larionov, on the point, there was Fedosov and Kasatonov, and then had Tretiak in goal. That unit was amazing. And if you look at the unit, 4 players, the 2 defensemen and the 2 wingers, Krutov and Makarov, could do a lot of things on the ice, take chances, take risks, because there was one guy in the middle of the ice, Larionov, that read off everybody else. He read the other team and what they were doing, but he also was very conscious to read his own teammates, and he was the backup guy, always supporting behind any pressure or offensive activity they took place. And he was a genius on skates. When I got a chance to coach Dave Tippett, it was the same thing. Tipper was such a smart player. His wingers could do all kinds of things, take chances, forecheck longer than normal, and Tipper was always there. The D could pinch, and Tipper was there. So these organizers in your lineup really, really are important. And I use the term playing coaches because really, in essence, they're playing coaches. They're guys that have such a great understanding of the game. Players they play with can take more risks to their game.
Got a comments from Helen on the Facebook live stream, and she says, "Hi, Dave. Very good to hear this interview and learn more about your book. Looking forward to reading it and seeing you and Linda back in Saskatchewan. Great job on this interview." It's easy for us uneducated in hockey folk, being myself and my old man, to kind of look at the differences of the North American game and the European game and say the European game is kind of built more so on the speed and the skill. Now we're kind of seeing that translate to the National Hockey League and the North American game. But you obviously coached in the National Hockey League and you coached in Europe. So would that be accurate to say that at one time that was the biggest difference between the two, or kind of what was the biggest difference between the European style and the North American style for you?
Well, I'll tell you, it's very interesting. The European game, it looked at times disorganized because they're not nearly as positional, but they read off each other and filled 3 lanes. They had 2 defensemen back at the right time, but they had so much interchange of position that at times it was almost confusing to watch, and you wondered whether there was any structure to it, and there was. Our game was very linear, very predictable, very straightforward, right ahead, and so the 2 games were really, really different. Back in the 60s and 70s, if you remember the 72 series, it was like watching a whole different style of game completely, watching the Russians play Canada. But what's happened, it's interesting, for about 10 or 15 years, we took an awful lot of their stuff whether it be Swedish or Finnish or Russian. We took a lot of their ideas to our game, and it makes sense because we started to bring over Finns and Swedes and Czechs to play in the NHL. Eventually, in the early 90s, Russian players could play. So our game, we took a lot from their game up until about, I would say, the start of the 90s. And then it's interesting because television, globalization of the NHL occurred. And Russians could watch NHL hockey any night of the week, where before they might get one game in a month, they could get a game a night. So suddenly the Europeans started to take more of our stuff to their game. So both games have moved where they were at one time very different. They've become a little bit more and more similar and more of a hybrid game. I don't think it's one style, but our games are so close now that if you watch a Russian KHL game and you watch an NHL game, they're very, very similar in style, whereas before they certainly want. So this evolution has taken place. And again, the role of television has really globalized the game. And it's not a secret very long, whether it's been in Russia, something new happens in Sweden or Finland, television puts it right out, and obviously computers out to everybody right away. So it's everything's changing, everything's dynamic in the world, and hockey certainly is too.
The name of the book is called Loose Pucks and Ice Bags, and it's now available. Dave King, legendary hockey coach who started his coaching career at the University of Saskatchewan. Should I say which year, Dave?
1979.
1979 was the first year. I don't want to date anyone that I shouldn't and get into trouble here. That'd be detrimental to the cause. The other chapter you have in the book, which I find interesting, is called Puck Hog, right? And that's sort of, it seems to me that would be a chapter kind of going after the coach that's in development, right? It is. You like the parents go out, and I was there, right? You go out and buy the $300 stick and wonder why in a game your son only touches the puck for 17 seconds, right? So maybe talk a little bit about that, and then I got a follow-up question to that point, but just kind of delve into, kind of playing away from the puck, sort of, and what makes a good hockey player isn't necessarily defined by the puck being on his stick all the time or her stick.
No, it's not. But every young child that plays the game, they certainly want that puck. It's like playing soccer with one soccer ball on the field. The kids bunch up and everybody wants it. The same in hockey. And then, of course, as a coach, you're telling these young kids, pass the puck, share it. And they're saying, I just got the darn thing. Why would I give it away to somebody else? I want to keep it. So until children are old enough to really understand the value of a pass, what the pass can accomplish, they're not going to pass the puck very much. So in that chapter, I do talk about coaches being patient. Don't worry about the kids being a bit of a puck hog. Once they understand the value of the pass and they understand what the pass can really accomplish in the game for them and for other people, then they'll start to use the pass, but they have to understand what the value of it is. And, you're right. In our game, there tends to be, and it's improved so much. At one time, the puck carrier was dictating to the other four players. I mean, it was clear that he was the person in control because he had the puck. Now, our game has changed a lot. Like the players off the puck, away from the puck, Ray, are much more important than the guy with the puck. Our players are more active now, skating off the puck to create plays for the puck carrier, and that's changed our game a lot. That's why we're so difficult to play against at the Olympic and World Championship level, is because the puck carrier isn't the most important guy. He's an important guy to defend against, but you also have to deal now with the four other players being so active. And our defensemen are so active in the play now. They join the rush. They're in on the cycling in the offensive zone play. Every interview on television with an NHL game, you always hear the players talking about we have to activate our defensemen, get them involved. And it's a five-man game, and it's never been this way before. At one time, it wasn't that way. Now it's a complete five-man game with the puck carrier no longer dominating the game as much as they did before.
The other chapter that I found interesting you talked about was talent dilemma. That was one of the chapters in the book. Can you maybe touch on that chapter a little bit? I find that really intriguing because, especially where you've been, overseas, university, and then in the NHL where the high-paid elite are, that's an interesting chapter because it would vary depending on where you're coaching.
Ray, your point's a good point. It does vary where you're playing, but there's no question there is really an important thought in your question, and that is the fact that the game now is so dependent upon all the players being active, all the players getting involved, that it makes the game more exciting for fans because the game is so dynamic. It's so much faster, and without a doubt, I think the game is harder to play now, and we all know that it's not an easy game to play because there's 10 guys on the ice, lots of speed, small ice surface. You can't escape the rink. The boards keep you in the play. You can't go out of bounds because it doesn't exist. So the game is really much harder to play than ever before. And I just find the game really intriguing. I find the fact that the game is constantly changing keeps every coach motivated, and that's a really important part of the game.
Dave, was there a time in your career where the international elements of it just became so appealing and intriguing to you? Because you're very much known. I mean, you're in the International Ice Hockey Federation Hall of Fame, and you've coached at the highest level in the NHL with 4 different teams. What attracted you to kind of international hockey, probably more so than any other young coaches or coaches in North America that would like to have their sights set on the NHL and that's it?
Well, as you mentioned, Ray, I really cut my teeth coaching in major, junior, and then at the University of Saskatchewan after that. And then after in 83, 84, Hockey Canada invited me to Calgary to coach the Olympic team. The Olympics that year were in Sarajevo. So I got a chance to get my feet really wet into international hockey on a very daily basis. Almost all our games were against international competition leading up to the Olympics. And that really piqued my interest a lot. Now, when I finished my national team experience in 84, I stayed with the program from 2 more Olympic Games, 88 and 92. So I spent about 13 years in international hockey. And I realized that there was so much to learn from the international game that we could apply to our game, that I found it really fascinating. And then, of course, after 92, I went to the NHL, enjoyed that. And then when the chance came to go back to Russia, Sweden, Germany, these kind of things, I just couldn't pass it up because my memories were so great of what a great experience it was. I wanted to get back and see how it had changed over there. And particularly in the KHL in Russia, it was a wonderful experience to have a chance to be the first Canadian, North American, to coach behind what was the Iron Curtain at one time. And I just found it so fascinating. I was able to watch children practice and play games and learn why they played the game differently and what they did to do that. And so, I've always had a love affair with international hockey. And it started right with back with the World Junior Championships in 1982-83 was my first real kick at the cat with international hockey. And then being involved in 4 Olympics, all that preparation leading up to Olympic Games to play against international teams was just terrific. A great learning experience. I've always felt that as in any profession, it doesn't matter what the profession is, when something is interesting and motivating, the job is no longer a job, it becomes a passion. And hockey became a passion for me and for my family. And we've had a lot of fun doing it. I find the game every day. I can learn something about the game. So it's been really a good evolution for our family and for myself to be involved in hockey. And my son Scott now coaches with the Moose Jaw Warriors in the Western Hockey League, and he's a terrific young coach and really enjoys that. So it's a big part of our family, and we really love hockey. It is a passion for us.
Dave King joins us on the YXE Sports Podcast. Of course, we are live at Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar, as we are every single Monday. And you just heard Dave King mention that his son coaches the Moose Jaw Warriors there in the WHL's East Division bubble, as are the Saskatoon Blades. You can come on down to Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar to watch every single Saskatoon Blades game. There's food specials, there's drink specials, and the Saskatoon Blades are taking on the Brandon Wheat Kings tonight at 8 o'clock. So make sure you come on down to Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar on the corner of Circle and Idlewild. Dave, it sounds like you still watch a ton of hockey. So who are kind of the guys you like watching the most at the NHL level today?
Oh gosh, there's so many good teams to watch and so many great players. Like, I still think Crosby's great. McDavid, what can you say about this guy? Matt Barzell, Nate McKinnon. Holy goodness, there's so many great players. Like, it just amazes me how many star players we now have in our game. And if we can just keep the refereeing the way it is and allow these guys to play and be a factor in the game, it's really terrific. I can't imagine now McDavid playing back in the 80s when we were in the 90s, when we were allowed to use sticks to hold people up in the middle zone.
Yep.
He would still be a good player, very good player. But now, because you can't impede him, he's even better. Barzell, McKinnon, all these guys with speed now are so exciting, and the rules allow those guys to have a bigger impact on our game. And that's excitement for fans.
I want to take you back to 1983. Of course, that was the year that the University of Saskatchewan Huskies won the national championship that you were behind the bench for. Dave Adolph, who coached the Huskies for years and years, was on that hockey team. But kind of take me back to that 1983 season and some of the players and some of the memories you have from that championship winning team.
Well, we had an amazing group of people. I'm not going to pick out too many names but Tim Hodgson from Saskatoon. We had Willie Desjardins, Dave Adolph. We had a lot of great players from that area. The one thing that I should talk about when I talk about the Huskies was the 2 seasons prior to that, we got to the national final game. Won our conferences, got to the national final game, and then lost in the final, and both times in heartbreaking fashion. But the third time, we didn't. We got there and we won it. So it was a great group of young athletes, and these guys wanted to change the image of Husky hockey, and so they put up with kind of a grumpy coach at times, and these guys played so well, and they really represented the University of Saskatchewan very well, and winning the national championship was a great accomplishment. I wish it had been done since then more, but it will happen. And of course, we have Mike Babcock coming in, but Dave Adolph had the team right there knocking on the door, just didn't get the puck luck sometimes, makes a difference. But having Mike now is exciting for our program too. And Merlis Belcher Place, what a great facility. University of Saskatchewan is a great institution academically, but boy, have they ever created some terrific facilities for athletes. And you can't go to a better university than the University of Saskatchewan. If you want to get a great education and play high-level sport at many different sports, our women's soccer and men's soccer teams are really good. Our women's basketball team, national champions.
Absolutely.
So we produce terrific athletes, and a lot of it's because of really dedicated coaches. And so people in Saskatoon are lucky. They've got the Hilltops, you've got the Blades, you've got all the Husky sports. There's just so many good things to get out and see. And that's one of the things is get out and see them because they're certainly really good.
Yeah, that is a terrific endorsement. You think about Canadian Football Hall of Famer and Scott Flory coaching the football team, the Olympic women's coach Lisa Tomaitis with that basketball team, and Mike Babcock, who endorsed your great book, Dave, has won at every single level.
Yeah.
And you're being a little bit humble here when you talk about Merlis Belcher Place, because you were the guy who was the chair of the Capital Campaign, and I understand that you did a terrific job in reaching out to those you knew to really play a key hand in that. And you and I were talking before we started here about the facility. All those years in Rutherford Rink. And I think about being on CJUS radio, wondering if the rust was going to fall on me. Isn't that terrific just to see that come to fruition? Thanks to people like Merlis, but just so many people, whether the donation was $5 or in the millions. It's something this university deserves, isn't it?
No, Ray, you're right. And a lot of people did a lot of work on the fundraising. We had some tremendous people that put hours and hours more than I did into it. And, we were able to get enough money along with a great donation from Merlis Belcher to put together this wonderful facility for ice hockey. It's got training facilities for basketball and volleyball. Our soccer team has a real good dressing room in there. We have medical and physiotherapy weight room in there. So it's a multi-purpose building, and it says a lot for the University of Saskatchewan and their philosophy of developing the whole person. And I think that's really good. And I was very proud to be with the Husky hockey program. I had a chance to, as I said before, coach with some great players, and those are great memories. And you know what I really like about the Husky hockey program is the way the alumni has helped so much to build that program and make it strong and keep it strong. And it's got an impeccable record. And boy, there's some good things to see in Saskatchewan. I'm looking forward to getting back in the winter one of these times to watch a game. This winter we had planned to go back, but with COVID, we didn't get back.
Ian, maybe we can take a look at the pictures that we have brought up. So there's a great picture of you, Dave. That looks like a guy who's hiding in Scottsdale talking hockey right there. That's fantastic. And then about 2 years ago, you and I, we spoke at a little event together, and that was great because just before that picture was taken, you and I had done a little Q&A, but earlier in the day, you actually threw on the old Microns and skated with some of the 6 and 7 year olds, which I know was a big thrill for them, as some of their, and I don't mean to make you sound old, but some of the grandparents were telling, the grandkids about who Dave King was before you got on the ice. So that must have been a thrill to play such a big role in to come back and give at that stage must have been pretty cool for you.
You know, Ray, it was a great day. I remember that day as clear as a bell. Came back and spent a little bit of time in Rutherford Rink, the old doghouse, with a bunch of little kids. And when they were it was the last time I think the building might be used. And I had the opportunity to go on the ice with these young children. And I can tell you, I have an old pair of Micron skates. I had them on. And I remember talking to the kids about what we were going to do. And I looked down and saw this little character looking at my skates. He had never seen skates that looked like ski boots before. So I can tell you, I really dated myself. The poor little guy, he had never seen anything like it. Like, he was stunned as to what these things were. But we had a great day, and I have great memories from the doghouse. Great place for a coach to cut his teeth. And so many people played hockey in that facility over the years, whether it be intramural hockey, intercollegiate, or youth hockey, minor hockey. It was a great facility, but it was time. And we're now into Merlis Belcher, which it's palatial. It's really nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Dave, hey, thanks so much for joining us. We took up a little bit more of your time than we promised, but it was great to talk hockey with you. Of course, you do have a new book.
Can we get one more look at the book, Ian?
And that's one of the reasons why we talk. So there it is, Loose Pucks and Ice Bags by Dave King. So thanks so much, like I said, for taking some time to chat with us tonight.
Guys, thank you so much. And you got a great show. I really enjoyed it. And I can't wait to get back to Saskatoon and up to Waskesiu Lake.
I betcha. Yeah. Okay. We got a little bit of snow coming this week. After that, it's safe, so you can come in.
I'll be there. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be wearing my shorts too, Matt.
Yeah, attaboy. Sounds good. Thanks, Dave.
Take care.
Good stuff. Okay. Thanks, Dave.
So Dave King, legendary, of course, hockey coach. And wow, what do you say about a guy like Dave King? Nothing but good things.
Well, again, as I said, was a reference for my first job in radio in 1983. But you think about a coach like that who is able to kind of, you think about coaching at the highest level possible, right? You think about coaching the Calgary Flames, Columbus, Rick Nash, Gary Roberts, some stars in the NHL. Balancing, I won't say egos, but personalities in the National Hockey League, to being a coach that can, do his best to develop players overseas in some of the greatest, settings ever, whether it be the Spengler Cup or the World Juniors or the Olympic Games that he coached in, which is totally different than the National Hockey League, especially with Dave coached, because the NHLers weren't playing on the national team, right? So, yeah, no, it's a remarkable story, and for him to get some of this down on paper is going to be very valuable to some coaches and hockey fans, for sure. For sure. I think Dave is getting summoned to Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar the next time that Dave is up in Saskatchewan. So on the way up to Waskesiu, he'll have to make a pit stop here at Wendell Clark's. But again, thanks so much for Dave King for joining us. We do have the winner for the Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar gift certificate as well, and that goes to Helen. So Helen, make sure you reach out to us and make sure we can set up a way to get that gift certificate in your hands. Once again, we would like to thank Dave King so much for taking some time from Scottsdale, Arizona. Of course, his new book, Loose Pucks and Ice Bags, is a must read for up-and-coming coaches that are coaching right now, or maybe even just some players or general hockey fans. So I know that I'll have to find a way to get my hands on a copy of Loose Pucks and Ice Bags. That's it.
We're good to go.
Final thoughts? Like I said, it's always a pleasure, and you can see a guy who's just very warming and engaging, and he's, he doesn't think of himself as a personality. He thinks himself as a mentor and a coach and whatever, but you always come away from a guy like Dave King thinking you made a friend, and that's I've been lucky enough to have that going for almost 40 years now, so that's great.
Exactly. So big thanks to Dave King, a big thanks for everybody that tuned in tonight, and Helen says great, so she's happy about getting the Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar gift certificate. Make sure you join us next Monday, exact same time, exact same place. I will do it all over again.